The cobbler puts on his customer's shoes and turns into them. Find out what happens if he tries on a woman's or dead man's shoes from our recap of the movie The Cobbler. The early 20th century, New York City. A bearded man with a hat comes to a meeting of merchants. Everyone complains that business is going downhill, and many people are losing their jobs. A man's boots with torn-off soles are placed in front of a local cobbler, and he soon gets to work. The shoemaker's son peeks into the workshop, and his father tells the boy that he is working on a special sewing machine. It turns out to be a gift from some hobo, and it's very unusual. We are moving back to present day. Max Simkin works as a cobbler in a small workshop. From morning till night he repairs shoes. He is a good craftsman, so many customers come to him. During his break, Max sees a gorgeous girl on the street, but she is not interested in a laborer like him. Her boyfriend Emiliano is just as gorgeous as she is. Jimmy the barber works next door. He advises Max to find a girlfriend, but the protagonist is completely lacking any self-confidence. A cute girl named Carmen visits him in the atelier. She asks the man for help. The thing is that a large developer wants to demolish apartment buildings in the area and build a large shopping mall in their place, and the girl intends to prevent this. Max signs Carmen's petition, though without much enthusiasm. Apparently, the man doesn't seem to care at all. In the evening, Max returns home. He lives with his mother Sarah. They both miss Max's father, who has been missing for years. A new day dawns, and our shoemaker is back at work repairing shoes. A rather insolent guy enters the shop and demands Max cleans his shoes. It's a local gangster named Leon Ludlow. Max fulfills the order, and the man gives him another pair of shoes. He orders the cobbler to replace their soles by tonight. Max immediately gets to work, but his sewing machine breaks down in the process. He is forced to use the old machine left by his ancestors. Having fulfilled the order, he sits down and waits for the problematic customer. Max looks at Leon's chic shoes and suddenly decides to try them on. And at that very moment, he turns into Leon himself. Max begins to panic and takes off the other man's shoes in terror. He immediately becomes himself. The protagonist closes the workshop, looks at Leon's shoes confusedly, and puts them on one more time. Leon looks at him from the mirror again. Max decides to test the trick on other shoes, but it seems to work only on Leon's. And then the man finally realizes that it's all about the old sewing machine he's been working on. He grabs another pair of shoes and makes a few stitches on them with the magic machine. He puts on these shoes and turns into a bearded old man. The enthusiastic cobbler grabs another pair of shoes, and then another, and another, and another. He becomes a dark-skinned man with a short haircut, a bald guy with a tattoo on his forehead, or even a dead man. Finally, Max finds a woman's red shoes and immediately takes them to the sewing machine. However, he doesn't turn into a lady. Apparently, these shoes were worn by, some man who was only pretending to be a woman. Bummer. Morning comes. Max rides the subway and looks around with interest. He imagines himself in the shoes of each of the other passengers. While at work, the man tries the shoes of another client and pays a visit to Jimmy. The barber doesn't recognize him in the stranger's disguise, and it amuses Max greatly. He realizes that he can become anyone. A builder, a Four Eyes guy, a hipster, an Asian, whoever you want. Max has fun and walks around the city in other people's shoes. He realizes that this superpower can be used for personal gain. One day, the protagonist eats lunch in a cafe as a dark-skinned man, then goes to the bathroom, changes his shoes, and voila! He's Max Simkin again, which means he can leave without paying. The cobbler puts on the shoes of one of his teenage customers and happily rides on the swings, then enjoys the pickles presented to him by Jimmy. Max behaves more and more defiantly. Impersonating Leon, he steals the successful businessman's shoes and drives his fancy car through the city at night. After returning home, Max gives his mother flowers and sees that she is feeling unwell. The woman confesses that she would like more than anything to have dinner with Max's father. The cobbler smiles and finds his father's old boots in the closet. In the morning, a gorgeous fancy-dressed girl whom our protagonist once had an eye on comes to his workshop. She brings her boyfriend Emiliano's shoes. Max looks at the guy's shoes with delight. They fit him perfectly. In the evening, he transforms into the successful handsome man and comes to the bar. He orders a cocktail and notices the gaze of girls interested in him. One of the ladies approaches Max, but there's a problem. She knows him, or rather, she knows the true Emiliano. Max and his new girlfriend get in a cab, and another problem arises. Where should they go now? The cobbler leaves the beauty and, disguised as Emiliano, arrives at his house. Emiliano's girlfriend has just taken a shower and beckons him in. Max goes crazy with excitement and immediately starts off to take off his clothes. But problem number 3. The protagonist can't take off his shoes, otherwise he'll immediately become himself. In desperation, Max runs away and returns home. He sees a news report with Carmen on TV and recalls her petition. Max meets her on the street as they chat about life. The shoemaker follows her around as a dark-skinned teenager, then goes back to work. He needs to stitch his father's shoes. Max puts them on and transforms into his dad. At home, he sets the table and makes a delicious dinner. Mom puts on the most beautiful dress and hears the doorbell ring. Her husband appears on the doorstep, and the woman can't hold back her tears. They hug each other tenderly and have a wonderful time over dinner. The woman is literally glowing with happiness. Then they dance, and the man tucks his wife into bed, after which our protagonist takes off his father's shoes. The next morning, Max goes to wake up his mother and realizes that she is no longer alive. He weeps bitterly at her bedside and has a farewell dinner with his family and friends. Jimmy comes to support his friend. Leon comes to Max's workshop requesting his shoes back. He insults the main character, and the latter refuses to give the shoes back because Leon hasn't brought a ticket. The furious man walks away. Max decides to follow him, and in order not to be noticed, he uses the shoes of a different customer and constantly changes appearance. He sees Leon enter a store and beat up a salesman there to steal some cash. Max continues the surveillance and sees Leon entering a building. When the criminal leaves, Max peeks into the house with Leon's boots on and meets some woman. She is really angry. It looks like Leon has hurt her badly. The woman packs her belongings and leaves the house. Max recalls the criminal has a collection of expensive watches and attempts to find them. He opens one of Leon's safes and discovers the entire collection of guns. Max is scared, but also rather curious. He tests the stun baton on himself and falls unconscious. After waking up, Max puts on the shoes of one of the clients and hurries to get out of the place. But Leon himself appears on the doorstep, sees the protagonist wearing his shoes, and immediately attacks him. Max uses the stun baton and it saves his life. He ties Leon up and puts a gag in his mouth. When the gangster wakes up, he faces a dark-skinned teenager. But we know it's Max. He demands that Leon reveals where he is hiding the watches, but the man just scoffs in response. Then Max puts on the transvestite woman's shoes and eventually finds out where the gangster's stash is. He steals the collection of expensive watches and intends to knock Leon out again. But that's when his friends knock on the door. Max urgently puts on Leon's shoes and opens the door for them. They arrive at some warehouse and find a beaten guy tied up to a chair. A gang of thugs is standing around him. The prisoner begs for mercy, and Max, in the guise of Leon, demands that the gangsters don't take the poor guy's life, but let him go. Everyone is shocked, but they still obey the order. Afterward, Max and his cronies arrive at the neighborhood developer. She orders the criminals to deal with an old man who doesn't wish to leave his apartment and hands them a lot of money. What a mess. Max returns to Leon's apartment as a transvestite woman, but there he encounters the real Leon with a gun. One blow and the protagonist ends up on the floor. The gangster threatens to strangle him, but Max manages to take off one of his red shoes and becomes himself again. Leon screams in horror, but the fight immediately continues. Max fights off the criminal with his shoes as they have very sharp stilettos. So sharp that the main character accidentally takes Leon's life. Max grabs his shoes and immediately runs away. He returns home panicking and closes all the windows. Waking up in the morning, the protagonist tries to pretend like nothing has happened, but his conscience torments him, and he goes to the police, where he confesses the crime. Max takes the cops to Leon's apartment, but there is no body in the apartment. Moreover, there is no trace of blood, no shoe bag, no red shoes, no guns. The cops conclude that Max is just crazy. Max visits Jimmy and sees the same blue bag and the red shoes in the barber shop. Max takes his stuff and Jimmy demands his friend explains everything. The barber declares that Max's father had behaved the exact same way before he suddenly disappeared. Max gets angry and leaves in rage. The protagonist comes to the developer as the transvestite woman and returns her the money, saying that Leon has refused the order. The developer is furious and her assistant knocks Max out. He wakes up in a strange car. It appears they are going to get rid of him. Luckily, his bag is right next to him, and Max finds the boots of a particularly interesting man. Okay, let's say a former man. Frightened by the dead man, the kidnappers get into an accident, and Max crawls out of the car, scaring the local kids. He takes off one of his boots, and the boy passes out in front of him. After returning to the workshop, Max hides the sewing machine and visits Jimmy to get some pickles. Suddenly, he remembers Carmen again, and runs to the girl's work. Max is willing to help preserve the neighborhood. Carmen shows him a building that is about to be demolished. It's where an old man named Solomon who refuses to leave his place lives. Max and Carmen visit the old man and tell him that he is in danger, yet the latter refuses to leave his house. Then Max comes up with a cunning plan. He puts on Mr. Solomon's shoes and heads to meet the developer. Max lies to her, saying that he is ready to move out, but demands $100,000 and a ticket to Chicago. In the evening, they bring him the money, but someone steals the agent's shoes at that time. Max uses the magic sewing machine one more time. He puts on Leon's shoes, and those same agents immediately go after him. However, it's a trap. Max turns into one of them and knocks out the other guy with a taser. Afterward, he calls the real estate developer and arranges a meeting with her. The woman arrives at Solomon's house and realizes that the old man hasn't left his apartment at all, even though he should be in Chicago by now. The developer threatens to burn the entire house to the ground and throw his daughter into the river. Reporters show up at that moment and say that all of her words have been recorded on camera. The woman lounges at Solomon in rage, but understands that she has lost. The developer is arrested. Carmen comes to Max's workshop and asks him to repair her shoes. The girl tells him that Mr. Solomon is doing well now and invites the protagonist over for dinner. Obviously, he agrees. Yet, Max has a couple of things to do. He puts on Leon's shoes and goes to see his ex-girlfriend. The protagonist gives her the gangster's watch so that she can sell it for a lot of money. Outside, he is approached by a man with a gun, who demands Max to get into the car parked nearby. There, Max meets the same guy whom he took pity on and released in Leon's guise. However, the car immediately gets into an accident. Max wakes up in Jimmy's barbershop. A friend offers him a glass of water and a pickle. Jimmy confesses to Max that he knows everything about the magic machine and his adventures. He is the one who got rid of Leon's body and then rescued Max himself. Jimmy takes off his shoes and the main character faces his father. They happily hug each other, and then Max scolds his father for hiding the truth for so many years. The father takes his son to the basement and shows him a huge collection of shoes. Now, Max has even more opportunities to become anyone he wants. Moreover, it turns out that Daddy even has a personal driver and a limousine stashed away. What a stroke of luck. If you had such an ability, who would you turn into? You've been watching the Movie Cat channel, and we are making recaps just for you.